On a radiant afternoon in the city's most exclusive garden estate, a crowd in designer attire gathered under the golden sun, their laughter cloaking the tension bubbling just below the surface. Elise stood quietly at the edge of the party, dressed simply yet with quiet confidence. Her composed presence stood in stark contrast to the ostentatious world around her, but the focus wasn't on the vibrant flowers or the shimmering fountains. All eyes were on Elise. Victoria, a wealthy heiress notorious for her cutting wit and fiercer envy, had been watching Elise for months, convinced this reserved consultant was trying to steal her fiancé. What Victoria didn't know was far more shattering. The man she called her future husband was Elise's older brother, Nathaniel. The air crackled when Victoria stormed across the garden, her voice slicing through the murmurs. "I know what you've been up to," she hissed. Without warning, her hand struck Elise's cheek, silencing the crowd. The slap reverberated, but the real shock was just beginning. Secrets long buried were about to unravel before everyone, with fortune, family, and trust hanging by a thread. As Elise's stunned gaze met Victoria's furious glare, the question loomed large. What happens when jealousy ignites a public catastrophe? This is a story of power, betrayal, and a truth no one saw coming. For a fleeting moment, the only sound in the sunlit garden was the nervous flutter of a sparrow landing on the marble fountain. Then voices erupted, whispers behind hands, gasps of disbelief, the subtle click of phone cameras capturing it all. Elise didn't flinch. She stood beneath the stairs, the red mark of Victoria's hand burning across her cheek, her gaze steady and unyielding. Across the lawn, Nathaniel appeared, his steps swift and purposeful. The crowd parted uneasily, making way for the city's most influential businessman. "Elise," he said, voice low and urgent. "Are you okay?" He barely glanced at Victoria, who stood trembling, her fingers curled as if she could retract her actions. "I'm fine," Elise replied softly, but her restrained tone carried weight. She pressed a hand to her cheek, grounding herself to keep her thoughts from spiraling. Every eye was on her: curiosity, judgment, pity, malice. The garden party, once a hum of polite chatter and laughter, had morphed into a battleground. The air buzzed with accusation and the unspoken question, what happens next? Victoria's father, Mr. Harrington, stepped forward with a forced smile. "Perhaps we should move inside. Get some ice. Calm down," he said, his voice smooth but his eyes darting from Nathaniel to the guests, assessing the fallout. Victoria didn't budge. Her voice, raw with panic, broke the hush. "You're going to believe her after everything?" Her accusation hung heavy, desperate. "She's been lying to you. All those lunches, those meetings, she wants to ruin us." Nathaniel's response was cold steel. "Elise is my sister." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Sister," someone whispered. The atmosphere shifted as doubt flickered in the eyes watching Victoria. She faltered, her words stumbling. You never said she never," her voice trailed off. "She's been hiding. Enough," Nathaniel cut in, his authority absolute. "You humiliated yourself. You humiliated Elise. And for what? Gossip?" He turned to Elise, his tone softening. "Let's go." As they walked toward the house, whispers trailed them, some sympathetic, others quietly cruel. Elise felt the isolation clinging to her, cold and heavy. She focused on Nathaniel's hand, warm and steady at her back, guiding her inside. In the mansion, the silence was oppressive. Nathaniel's face was taut. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. Elise shook her head. "No. If I leave now, that's what they'll remember. I didn't do anything wrong." Nathaniel nodded. "Then let them watch." Minutes later, Mr. Harrington entered, closing the door behind him. His voice was measured, neutral. "Nathaniel, this has gotten out of hand. Victoria is distraught. Surely we can avoid further scandal." Elise spoke first, her words deliberate but firm. "Mr. Harrington, I understand your concern, but I won't be blamed for something I didn't do." He looked at her, finally seeing the steel beneath her calm. "Elise, your reputation is my reputation." Elise cut in, her tone sharper. "What about your daughter's actions?" Nathaniel stood, unyielding. "There's no hiding this. Not anymore. I won't marry someone who attacks my family based on rumors." Mr. Harrington hesitated, his voice lowering. "I'll talk to Victoria. This isn't who she is." Elise's eyes held his, steady. Maybe it is. The conversation ended there. Elise and Nathaniel returned to the party, heads high. The energy had shifted, some watched with respect, others with resentment. That night, Elise sat alone in her apartment, the city's lights twinkling through her window. The slap still echoed, but so did the courage it took to stand her ground. Messages flooded in, friends offering support, strangers sharing stories of humiliation and resilience. Some were cruel, but most were kind. Elise responded to those that mattered, her words honest, never bitter. The fallout was swift. Videos of the incident spread online, dissected by strangers. Some branded Elise manipulative, others admired her composure. Victoria, for the first time, found herself isolated. Friends distanced themselves, invitations vanished, and her social media filled with criticism. The media pounced, eager for more scandal. Her father was livid, threatening to cut her off unless she issued a public apology. But Victoria, ever defiant, refused. She blamed Elise, blamed Nathaniel, blamed the world for turning against her. At night, she stared at her reflection, haunted by the slap that cost her everything. Her wealth no longer shielded her from consequences. Meanwhile, Elise's consulting business surged with new inquiries. People wanted to work with the woman who stood tall against humiliation. Her calendar filled with meetings, her name now spoken in rooms that once overlooked her. Still, doubt crept in at times. Elise recalled the mix of rage and desperation in Victoria's eyes. She wondered what it felt like to have everything handed to you, only to lose it in a single misstep. Weeks passed, and the city moved on to new scandals. But for Elise, everything had changed. She no longer hid her family name. At events, she introduced Nathaniel openly as her brother, and the world adjusted. The stigma faded. She felt freer, lighter, as if she'd stepped out from a shadow. One rainy afternoon, as Elise reviewed contracts in her office, a knock came at the door. Her assistant peeked in. "You have a visitor. She says it's important." Elise's heart tightened as she recognized the figure in the hallway. Victoria, stripped of her usual glamour, stood in a plain gray dress, hair pulled back, eyes red-rimmed. "Elise, do you have a moment?" Her voice was small, fragile. Elise hesitated, then nodded. "Come in." Victoria sat across from her, twisting her hands in her lap. Silence hung heavy with unspoken regret. Finally, Victoria spoke. "I was wrong about everything." She looked up, her gaze unsteady but sincere. "I lost everything because I couldn't see past my own jealousy. I blamed you, but it was never your fault. I'm sorry." Elise listened, her face unreadable. "You hurt a lot of people, Victoria. Not just me." "I know," Victoria's voice broke. "I'm trying to make it right. I'm actually working. No trust fund, no shortcuts. I want you to know that." The two women sat together, the city's quiet hum outside the window. For a moment, the walls between them softened, if only slightly. Elise nodded, her tone firm but not unkind. "I hope you find what you're looking for." When Victoria left, Elise exhaled deeply. The air felt different, clean, unburdened. In the weeks that followed, Victoria's family withdrew their support. She sold her jewelry, downsized her life, and took a job as a receptionist. The world she once ruled now belonged to others. Yet with every setback, Victoria learned about humility, survival, and the strength of starting over. For Elise, the incident became legend. She was invited to speak at women's conferences, requested for interviews, and became a quiet symbol of dignity under fire. Through it all, she stayed true to herself, her values, and the clients who needed her most. As spring returned, the garden where it all began bloomed with new roses. Elise walked its paths, sunlight warming her face, the past no longer a weight but a lesson. Victoria's name faded from the headlines, but her journey was just beginning. She faced the world without privilege, forced to confront every consequence of her actions. She worked hard, saved every dollar, and learned to measure her worth by effort, not inheritance. In the end, the world moved on, but those who witnessed the moment never forgot. Justice hadn't come through revenge, but through truth. The villain was unmasked, her punishment not just public shame and lost fortune, but a new life stripped of the safety net that once caught her. Elise's story didn't end with triumph over Victoria, but with quiet strength and the knowledge that dignity cannot be stolen. She kept building, kept helping, her name now spoken with admiration in circles that once ignored her. As night fell over the city, Elise gazed out her window, heart steady, future bright. The pain of injustice hadn't broken her, it had revealed who she truly was. And as the world slept, the question that once haunted her faded, replaced by hope, earned respect, and the certainty that light always finds its way through.